Hello and welcome to a little bit of bonus action here on your show. That's right, it's the Kickout crew doing a little bit of bonus interviews with joining us today is a legendary ring announcer from WCW, TNA, and for some of us wrestling nerds, seeing him in the XWF. It is David Penzer. David, thanks for joining us.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me. And volume 2 is going to be very XWF heavy with business plans and all kinds of stuff nobody's ever seen before.
Well, I look forward to that as somebody who has watched some of that XWF stuff. I look forward to seeing some of the behind the scenes stuff there.
There you
With
go.
that, oh yeah. Well, I guess on that note, I guess I'll kind of ask the standard first question here, which is, what made you want to write a book?
I didn't. It's a funny story, actually. I never had any intention of writing a book. Even when we were doing our project, it was never supposed to be an autobiography. It was supposed to be a scrapbook. About a year and a half ago, I was cleaning out my desk in my office, and I saw I had a file folder with like hundreds of pages of old formats, business plans, internal memos, all kinds of stuff. I had the last Nitro format, which blows my mind, has never been released until now. I have, tons of Saturday night formats. You could even see the evolution of formats from like one pagers to, by the end of Nitro, very specific production notes and stuff. So I put a 1995 WCW Saturday Night one. I took a picture of it, of the format, and I put it on Twitter. I was like, anybody be interested in this kind of stuff? What do you think it's worth? And I got hundreds of pages, and people were interacting with me and stuff like that, and it was overly positive. And then I got a text, not a text, a PM on Twitter from DM, whatever they call it, from Guy Evans, who I had talked to a couple times when he was doing the Nitro book. Great book, by the way. And he said, give me a call tomorrow morning. And I said, okay. So I called him, and he said, we should do a scrapbook. He said, I have a few things. You have a bunch of stuff. We could tell some stories about the guys, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, all right, that's perfect. That's perfect, because nobody wants to hear my story. So about 3 months in, he's like, well, we're still going to have the formats in there, but I want to do an autobiography. I'm like, why? He said, well, because you don't realize it, because I guess you lived it and you're pretty humble, which I really am. But you don't understand how good your story is. And I said, well, it's a good thing you're a damn good writer, because it's going to need all the help it could get. And so we agreed to do that. And then here we are. And getting rave positive reviews. I haven't had one person, even Disco Inferno, didn't call me and say I hated it, which I expect would happen. Because he's just negative.
Yeah, he doesn't have the positive opinions on a lot. So to get that, that's a big deal.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, it's been a blast. It's called City Ringside Volume 1. You can get it on Amazon. We have different bundles at davidpenzerbook.com, davidpenzerbook.com, different bundles with different formats. You get all the formats in the book, but you could get different formats, rare, never before seen formats, like the last Nitro, printed out and sent with a copy of the book. And I've heard some people say, and it sounds like a good idea to me, is, go to a StarCast or a WrestleCon or one of those deals and get Flair and Sting to autograph the last page of the last format of that last match at Nitro. And, some people have said we've started a new type of memorabilia. So if that's the case, then I'm excited to have done that. But yeah, they've been these different levels of what you get and all that have been very, very, very far more popular than I could ever imagine. So guy tells me, what we, and I was like, no way. So the bundles are really something special, and you get a lot of cool stuff.
Oh, yeah,
Once again,
absolutely.
davidpenzerbook.com.
I'll say, yeah, there's a lot of us wrestling nerds out there who really enjoy getting that behind the scenes stuff with formats, especially seeing, how that sausage is made with these shows.
I was just going to say, you took the words out of my mouth. It's how the sausage is made. And it's like that in anything, really, the television industry, the music industry, politics. Everybody wants to know how this sausage is made if that's your thing that you're into. And if you're into wrestling, yeah, this is really, especially WCW in this book. This is really, behind the scenes, never before seen, rare look at exactly what went on. And I was excited reading it, and I had lived it. So
That's awesome. It's great to hear that. And I guess kind of on that note, you mentioned some people who kind of complimented the book. Is there someone out there? I know you mentioned Disco that has reached out to say they've enjoyed the book. That's maybe kind of surprised you a little bit that they've bought the book and read it.
No, I know Charles Robinson bought the book, but he's not done yet. He said that, yeah, I think he's annoyed that he bought one. I would have probably sent him one, but I said, because I had complimented Samantha Irvin on her ring announcing in one of these early podcasts, and so she reached out to me in a DM on Twitter, and we went back and forth a little bit, and I asked if, she said, "Can I get a book, autographed?" And I said, "Yeah." So when they were in France, I was like, "Hey, will you bring the book and have Samantha Irvin take a picture with it and tell her to please send an address where she wants me to send her book?" And he wrote back, he said, "I had to pay $29.99 for it. I didn't want to mess it up and take it all overseas." And I was like, but no, not nobody. I mean, I'm sure there will. It's only been out a few weeks, but uh, I'm sure I will be surprised if somebody's saying that they liked it, or maybe be surprised if somebody's saying they didn't like it. I'm really anxious to see what Eric Bischoff thinks. Uh, I was honest and fair, and I'm not worried about it, but I hope he agrees with most of the stuff I said, because I've gotten to know Eric a bit, and I think I know where Eric's head is at. He has that podcast where he talks about all this stuff, so I've listened to that for years. So I think I'm okay, but we'll see.
I think you'll be all right. I mean, your accounts are fantastic in the book. I have my copy as well, and I've enjoyed reading. I'll be honest, I haven't finished it yet, but I am working on it. I'm a slow reader, so um, part of the perks you mentioned with the pre-order is you get the formats for these shows that you have. What made you want to keep these formats around? I know a lot of people have had them, and then some people, Tony Schiavone famously, is just throwing them away. What made you want to keep them and kind of preserve them for yourself?
I have no clue. I had the same briefcase for most of my tenure in WCW, and I just think I put them in the. I'm not very good at, like, cleaning things out. I'm not one of those real anal retentive. I wish I was. So for the record, I'm not making fun of anybody. I wish I was. I'm a bit of a slob, and so I think I just stuck them in there and forgot they were there. And then I guess at some point when I was getting rid of that briefcase, I put them all in a file folder and said and said what put it there. So I had no idea what I was holding on to until I rediscovered it, and I know that there's a nostalgia boom. Um, like 5 or 6, 7 years ago, my wife made me throw out 2 hefty bags full of old WCW t-shirts, probably worth totally around $50,000 at this point. I've spoken to a couple experts, and they're like, "Yeah, man, you have the Captain Mike Rotunda shirt?" I said, "Yeah, I had 3." They're worth like 3,000 a piece. I'm like, "Don't tell me that. I want to kill myself." No, I shouldn't say that, because I shouldn't say that actually, because I'm joking, but I talk a lot about my battles with anxiety and panic attack, and I don't want to make light of that, because it's important to me that I shared that, and hopefully could help others.
No, absolutely. I understand where you come from on that there. So, I guess kind of to talk about your wrestling journey here. That's another kind of obvious question here. Is what made you? How did you become a fan of wrestling? And was this something you were always wanting to get into?
I never thought about it, I don't think. Yeah, I mean, I always did, I was sort of like Tony Khan when I was a teenager. I booked my own territory. He ran a national promotion. I ran a local, what do they call it? Territory, but it's the same thing. And the only difference is mine never got on TV in front of a million people. But uh, yeah, I was 11 years old, and I turned on Championship Wrestling from Florida in 1977, and Dusty Rhodes was there, and Superstar Billy Graham was there, and so many others. But those two are two of the most charismatic people in the history of the business, and they were feuding on top with each other, and I was just instantly hooked. Instantly hooked. I was mesmerized by it, especially the promos and the the uh, the angles, because it was a totally different it's totally different back then. Nobody cared about television ratings because what they cared about is that people would watch TV, that they would like the angles. The angles would want to make them see the match in their city, and that they would all show up and make a lot of money in each city. So it was a totally different business plan than it is now, and became it sort of flipped on a dime when the Monday Night War started. Absolutely on a dime, it became, who makes more money versus to who gets the higher ratings. And it changed the whole business, obviously, because you couldn't put, squash matches on, unless it was Goldberg, in his streak. And you had to give your main events away for free, and still built a pay-per-view. So it was a totally different business model than the territories. I've always been especially fascinated with the territories, just because I grew up watching it, and I just, each little territory did their own thing, had their own big stars, and their own bookers and stuff. And I think it's fascinating to look through. The national stuff is cool, and obviously, way more people, are fans. But I've always been infatuated with the territory days. So yeah, I just was hooked, and I started getting every wrestling magazine I could find, and went to the matches every week. And uh, I never really thought about getting in the business because it was such a closed business, and it wasn't even something that I consciously thought about. I was able to talk on a microphone. But I didn't even think about ring announcing, because there was a different ring announcer in each city and the territory, and usually they were older guys or friends of the promoter or friends of one of the boys. So I didn't even actively think about that. But what happened was, funny enough, is this company called Global Wrestling Alliance started in 1986. It was put on the penny stock market, which no longer exists for a reason. They raised $500,000 to start a wrestling company and get in the game, which was now worldwide, with Hulkamania running wild. And so it happened to be in Davie, Florida, and I lived the next city over. And it was run, funny enough, by a guy named who was a wrestler called Dr. Red Roberts. He was a local indie wrestler, and he did like a heel psychologist gimmick. But as a shoot, he was a psychologist, Dr. Michael Brannon. My dad was a psychologist, had a very successful counseling center in the same city. And how would who'd have known it? But one of his counselors was friends with Dr. Red Roberts. So that was when I sort of knew. I sort of kind of figured, okay, I got my foot in the door a little bit. I don't know if it's going to last one show. They didn't hire me. They just asked me to come out to see one of their TV tapings. And then they invited me to come hang around. They had an office in Davie. And then at night they would have in the back in the warehouse, they would have wrestling school. Norman Smiley, Dave Heath, Gangrel both broke in that wrestling school. And it was run by the great Larry Malenko. But I didn't know where it was going to go. I couldn't, you look back and you couldn't imagine that, 30 years later, here's what happened. But I just tried to keep it going every day, another day, another show, and that's really how I went about this whole thing. And, I went in, and it's funny, writing a book sometimes is therapeutic. I realized a lot of things, even doing these interviews is therapeutic. But what I've realized is I made a conscious decision, and I don't know why, but I'm glad I did, because in hindsight, it really did me well, to do two things. A, be super respectful. B, keep my mouth shut. C, don't act like a mark. And D, be a stooge. Now, there's a fine line between ass kissing and stooging, and I've crossed it a few times, if not more. But yeah, I mean, hey, Bob Roop was the booker. Larry Malenko was the Ted trainer. Rusty Brooks trained the guys in the ring, because Larry was in his 70s by then. Hey, can I get you a cup of coffee, sir? and they'd look at you like, who are you? But they didn't say anything. It was almost like, hey, can I take out the garbage when the night's over? That was the things I was doing just to be able to pay my lot rent, so to speak, to stick around. And nobody ever really asked me. Once they realized I would do it, they asked me to, but I was always, and I never asked about the wrestling business. I never asked for a picture or an autograph. Uh, I became friends with some of the students. And after a while, when you do that, and the same thing really happened in WCW with the wrestlers and the talent. Um, After a while, and it took a while, but like Larry Malenko called me in his office and said, "Hey, sit down." And I said, "All right, sir. What can I do for you?" He said, "Sit down." He said, "Who are you and why are you here?" And I said, "Well, I've been that fascinated with the business since I was 11 years old. I have absolutely no athletic ability in my entire body, but I'd love to get involved. I'd love to help, hand out flyers. I can talk on a mic if you need a ring announcer." And you could almost see like he sat back in his seat and his shoulders shrugged, like, okay, well, now I understand why he's here. He's trying to help. And back then, especially with a small little company like that, somebody helping, not asking for anything, was valuable. So Larry and then Bob Roop, the booker, kind of took me under their wing a little bit. And, I handed out flyers. Me and Alex Marvez were the street team for the Global Wrestling Alliance. And I promoted a couple shows with my dad with Global Wrestling Alliance for mental health awareness. And that led to, I don't want to give away the whole book, but that really led to other opportunities, which I call an improbable, near impossible dream to make something of this. It's one thing to get coffee for Dr. Red Roberts, nothing personal, but I wanted to see if I could take it to a next level. And I didn't really think I could, but it ended up happening, and I just worked my ass off. And same thing in WSub, stayed respectful, kept to myself, never asked questions, never asked for autographs. Now it's a different world now, so everybody's in the know. This was when you didn't get in the back of a room, you didn't get into a wrestling school if you weren't paying or you weren't a wrestler. So it was totally different, but yeah, that was how it started. And, it's gone on for 30 years and more than 30 years. And I'm extremely blessed.
Fantastic. And sometimes, like you mentioned, those small, even working indie shows now, it's that guy who's just willing to go in and help the company grow and the promotion grow. And, sometimes that's what these guys are wanting and looking for. And, you helps you get your foot in the door, like you said. And, it's just a great opportunity for you.
Yeah, I mean, even today, people have asked me when I've been doing this little media tour. People ask me, what would you say to somebody who wants to get involved as a ring announcer? I said, get your foot in the door. Uh, Tell the promoter that this is what you'd like to do ultimately, but you're willing to do anything to help. Don't expect anything in return. Be respectful. Don't act like a mark, even though you could get away with that a little bit more now because of cell phones and stuff. A lot more people take pictures. But I would say at the very beginning, don't. Um, the top guys, treat the top guys with everybody with respect, but especially the top guys. If it's a promotion that features, I'm trying to think, I'm just throwing a name out there. I don't think he even wrestles anymore, but Raven. If Raven's the top guy in the independent, hey, I really wanted, my name is, I wanted to introduce myself to you. I've watched you and I respect what you've done and the whole ECW thing. And, I wanted, get involved in this and potentially maybe become an announcer or a ring announcer. And if you could think of anything I could do to be of assistance, or if you have any advice for me, you know, please let me know. And people, they hear that and they go and they respect that. There's so many people. I don't want to get myself in trouble, but we live in a society where some people think they're owed something, and you're not owed anything. So people will. What I've found, even me as a person dealing with other people, is somebody who works hard and wants to get their foot in the door. I'll show them more you know, like when we were doing XWF, there were people that, wanted to get involved, and I was intimately involved in every facet of XWF. And if I saw somebody that was at a taping, and said, hey, I'm an indie wrestler. I'd like to eventually be on one of these shows, but I want to be here. I could run guys for you to the Go format, blah blah blah. You know, I mean, I wouldn't make a decision because Knobs was the boss and Jimmy Hart, but in my mind, I'd say I want to help this guy out. You know what I mean? So sorry, I got off on a tangent, but uh, hopefully that's advice that people could take.
Absolutely. I think that's good advice that a lot of people can take, especially like you said, guys wanting to break in, get into the business. Yeah, fantastic advice for anybody going out there. So now you'd mentioned before that you had kind of had some work on the microphone before getting into wrestling. So leads me to ask, I believe you mentioned in the book that you kind of had a DJing job before as a DJ. What are some of the odd jobs you've had that have been outside of the wrestling bubble?
I drove a limousine for a while of the beginning of WCW, getting, in between, taking the guys up on the road, the enhancement talent. I worked at Ruby Tuesdays as a waiter. I was a busboy at a delicatessen. I can't remember the name of it, in Boca Raton. And other than wrestling and real estate and my airbrush tattoo company, that's really a lot. Those are really only the only shoot jobs I've ever really done. Oh, I drive when real estate is down, and I don't do it anymore because my not that my sight is going, but my depth perception is going bad as I'm getting older, and so I don't want to like wreck a car and get sued and all that. But I used to drive Uber. If business was slow, I would just get in the car and I'd put on a Rays game, or I'd put on the news station that I'd be watching anyway because I'm a news junkie, and I just on satellite radio and just drive around and make a little money. So but other than that, it's just been wrestling, my running a successful business, and sometimes being a successful realtor.
Some interesting jobs there, but yeah, no, I guess I didn't realize the limo job for WCW as well. Which kind of leads me to my next question here, which is how did you get your foot in the door for WCW? What was that opportunity, and how were you able to get into that?
Well, to make a long story short, Bob Roop and I bought the ring when the company when Global went out of business, and did independent shows. And we were driving up and down the roads together, to promote the shows, to book the shows, to set up the shows, to have do the shows. And he just really taught me, a lot about the pro wrestling business. And he got a job after a while, working for Ole Anderson when Ole got the book as a road agent. And we had become pretty good friends by then. He was at my wedding, um, and I said, Bob, I know you probably can't, because you're taking a risk, but if you could put in a good word, that's all, that I would really appreciate it. And he did. I never expected he would. And the next thing I know, Jody Hamilton, the assassin, who was one of my favorite wrestlers growing up, is calling me on the phone saying, I heard you want to get involved. And I said, yeah, what could I do? Do you need a ring announcer? He's like, well, I don't know about that. I don't do that. But if you want to find 5 wrestlers each week, to pick up along the way, we'll rent you a van and we'll pay for the gas. And each of those, and he told me what the wrestlers needed to be. They needed to be a certain size, and particularly in a certain level, not like, somebody who was, 2 weeks into the wrestling business. And then he said, and they'll pay you each $25. And I said, they will? And he goes, yeah, it's common. And I found out it is common. That's how it goes back to Gene Anderson when he was booking the enhancement talent for Jim Crockett Promotions. And they get, Rip Rogers from Louisville, and George South from North Carolina, and different people from different areas. And I became their Florida guy. And um, so that's how I got my pinky toe in the door. I sort of did the same thing. And, eventually, people started to talk to me and trust me. Junkyard Dog called me Walking Man, because all I did was walk and do things all day, run guys for interviews. And, uh, had the sign-in sheet. Everybody had to sign to get paid, and all kinds of tax stuff and all that, so that people could get paid if they were new to the company. So yeah, the rest is history.
So when you get into WCW, you kind of mentioned some of the jobs you had. How does ring announcing come up? I know they have at the time it's Gary Capetta, I do believe. Um, so how does ring announcing come up as something that they're like, hey, we think you'd be good in this role?
That didn't happen that way. That would have been much funner. Um, uh, so when I first got there, the executive producer of the executive of production, which sort of like handled like aside from doing ring announcing, play by play, it kind of dealt with the ring announcer and the production crew and all that. I don't really remember exactly, where the lines are blurred. But I remember Jim Ross was the guy in charge of ring announcers, to make a long story short. And so I went up and told him, I said, sir, I don't know if you know this, but I've ring announced before, and I've been on talking on a microphone for, as a DJ. And if you ever have an opportunity to come up, please let me know. And he left right after Eric started, and Tony had come back from WWF. And Tony, I've never told Tony that. And a couple of weeks later, he said that I heard through the grapevine that there was the backup ring announcer got fired, and I asked if I could have an opportunity to have that spot and explain to him what I explained to JR. And he said, sure. He said, so we'll have some tryouts here. And I like to say I won by default because I was driving guys up anyway. So I got the job as the backup ring announcer, and did the syndicated shows and a lot of the house shows that Hulk Hogan wasn't on when Hulk came in. And the rest was history. So, and we go a lot more into the details in the book. This is just a
Right.
Cliff Notes version.
Right. Yep. No, I was saying, I know in the book there's a good background story for everything. Just trying to get people a little taste for the book here and get some little teasers out there for everything. But speaking of the book, one of the you mentioned Hulk Hogan. One of the stories in there is about a house show in Orlando where forgot to get a tape to Pee Wee for the ring music that night. And you kind of in the book call it you keep mentioning, oh, I might get fired. I think I'm going to get fired for this. Is that kind of like a moment you think of from WCW where like that was the scariest moment of like, oh man, I might have messed something up really badly?
I was never confident with my job level. My job, what would you call it? Job security. So if I screwed up, and that was potentially a big screw up that ended up working out okay, and I learned a lifelong lesson from it. But uh, but yeah, I never really felt comfortable that hey, I'm the ring announcer and I'm the guy, and a lot of that was probably lack of confidence. Um, you know, I guess in hindsight, I should have had some, but I didn't know what I didn't know. Uh, it's easy looking back and saying that, but ring announcers are a dime a dozen, and there's always a chance that, Eric Bischoff had a brother whose son wanted to be a ring announcer, and next thing I knew. So, uh, so every time I got in trouble or I screwed something up, I thought, of course, I'm going to get fired. And then it's kind of a running gag through the book, not a gag really, but a running story. And but luckily, I made it till the end. So I guess I had more security than I thought, but at the time, I had very little confidence in job security.
I understand that. I mean, there's always that fear with a lot of people in their work environment. One of the things, and you mentioned it with your book is, I know for a lot of us fans, you are kind of the voice of Monday Nitro. You've been, I believe, every episode, if I'm not mistaken.
Never missed one.
Yeah. But
never
one of
missed
the
the Thunder.
And Thunder as well, yes. One of the things that I have to ask about is with Nitros is they always do the spring break episode where they go to Club Vila or just some random spring break destination. And always wearing the bright beach shirts, the stuff like that. Were you always wanting to do different kind of wardrobe than the standard just tie and suit as the ring announcer, or did you want that consciously as like kind of something different?
No, ring announcer wears a tuxedo unless there's a situation where you don't. Um, so I would always ask, but the first time we did like a Club La Vila, I said, what would you like me to wear? They said, wear a pair of slacks and a Hawaiian shirt. The first Road Wild, what would you like me to wear? Wear a pair of jeans. If you got cowboy boots, that's cool. And I bought a vest. I wore a white shirt and a vest. I think I wore my white ring announce shirt, ring announce tuxedo shirt and a vest. And no, I was able to I had all very unique cummerbund and bow tie sets. Probably I had 50 of them at the height. And that was sort of my way of expressing my personality on any given night. Because no, I knew I had to wear a tux, but what I could control was I could control what cummerbund and bow tie set I wore. And I never planned it out. I would take 3 or 4 on the road each loop. And which sometimes I wore the same one every night. It just was whatever mood I was in. And so that was how I got to stand out a little bit. I didn't do it to stand out, but it did have that effect.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's what helped kind of make it different was seeing that different style, seeing it change every week. It just kind of you kind of look for stuff like that when you're watching the shows. So another thing I'd like to ask about is we have obviously the famous story from your interaction with Chris Jericho when he tied you into a story of his starting his heel turn. Kind of one thing I've always wondered, is was there ever any other ideas pitched to you of like including you in angles or storylines or even anything where you're like, hey, I could maybe help out with this?
No, that was the only one. And I got involved in some angles and stuff, obviously throughout the business. There's a famous one with Randy Savage and where he knocked the hell out of me. And I think he was wrestling Diamond Dallas Page at a pay-per-view. But no, I never did. And Chris was the me and Chris wrote a lot together in various incarnations of different people, but we wrote a lot together. And when he first came there, and it's something he wanted to do, and he decided to include me because that's what Chris does. He comes up with angles to get people over that get himself over and draw money. He's probably the greatest of all time, and GOAT is not a word I like to throw around. But as far as successfully changing your character on such so many times, and each character being something special and drawing money and getting over. I can't think anybody else who's had that success. And it was the little things he did. He would rip off my tux at the end of the match, and he'd take my chair that I was sitting in, and he'd slam it against the ring post. Well, the next week he'd come out, and he'd bring me a new tux jacket, which makes sense, but he'd bring me a chair, and it was like almost comedic because I'm sitting, unless it was the first match of the entire show, I'm sitting on a chair already. And I'm in an auditorium or building that has 5,000 chairs. So, but it's the little things like that. It's the snap of the pen before he said, "You're on the list." That became a pop. A snap of a pen got a pop because he thinks of little things like that. And he's just brilliant like that. And I actually was texting with him the other day. He has a copy of the book, and when he gets a chance to read it, we're going to do Talk is Jericho. So I'm looking forward to that.
That'd be a lot of fun to do. Listening you here on Talk is Jericho, plug for that there. As a ring announcer, as you said, you've covered tons of shows, been to a lot of venues. Was there ever a venue or a show where when you were in the ring and you kind of just look around the arena, you're just like kind of that awestruck, wow, this is a huge event, this is a huge moment?
Yeah, the domes were always like that. Superdome and the Chicago was always like that. LA Forum, which is where the Lakers played. It's called something else now. But we had all these celebrities ringside, and Vegas, Grand Garden Arena was always fun. But I never really, I was always enamored. Just my thing is, the only pop, ring announcers aren't really supposed to get a pop, but I got an automatic pop because I was the first one to come out and say good evening, you know, Macon, Georgia, fill in the blank. And that got a, pop just because they knew the show was starting. But yeah, I don't think there was ever a time that I didn't get that pop from wherever city I was in and say, man, this isn't the coolest thing in the world. I don't know what is. I mean, I think I still do. When I worked for Impact up until the end of last year, I still would. That's it's almost like a drug. When it went away, it took some time to get used to it. You could understand why the wrestlers, the roar of the crowd, even for a ring announcer, is almost like a drug. And yeah, I had to go through a little withdrawal after WCW ended. But whenever I do it now, whether it's a small little indie show or Impact TV taping or whatever happen to do down the line, whenever I got that pop from Good Evening, fill in the blank city, I always think to myself, geez, this is still doing this. How cool is this?
I would say it has to be just a total complete rush and just always exciting out there. Uh,
For sure.
you mentioned in LA seeing celebrities, so naturally I have to ask. WCW is always bringing in different celebrities, either wrestling or just kind of doing interactions or anything like that backstage. Was there ever a celebrity that came in that you were kind of, I don't want to say awestruck, but just kind of like, holy crap, I can't believe so and so is here right
Uh, Probably George Steinbrenner. Because I grew up I was born in the Bronx and I grew up a Yankee fan, even though for the longest time until, about 15, 20 years ago, I didn't enjoy baseball, but still the fact that it was George freaking Steinbrenner was there. And I got a picture with him. He was a very nice guy. He was sitting at ringside on the other end where I was sitting on the other side. But there's been a lot. One of the coolest things is when Wayne Gretzky came up to me in LA and he said, he had his son with him. And he said, my son wants to be a wrestling ring announcer when he gets older. And he looks up to you. Do you mind if I get a picture with him? With you and him? And Wayne Gretzky's asking me to take a picture with his kid. And I said, yes, sir, I'd be honored, but only if I could then get one with you or you and your son afterwards. So, I could show everybody I got to meet the, greatest hockey player of all time. But that was kind of cool. It's kind of humbling. Uh, so yeah, it was always kind of fun to see would show up and it was a cool thing to do and the cool place to be and for a while. And so yeah, I was kind of a mark like that. I never have gotten an autograph from one person. I'm a picture guy. I just want to stand next to you, take a picture. You don't have to talk to me. I don't want your autograph. I just wanted to for posterity. And there's a lot in the book of pictures that I took with celebrities during that time. Um, but uh, but yeah, I didn't want to be friends with you, although I would if you wanted to be friends back. But it wasn't like I was, again, not to be a mark, just to be respectful. Again, it's like a pattern of how I live my life, I guess. Like I said, this is like therapy for me. Every time I do an interview, I learn something more about myself.
now. No, absolutely, yeah. I mean, doing all these are probably conjuring up a lot of great memories and good stories to tell, and hopefully get them ready for volume 2 as well.
Yeah, volume 2 is going to be very XWF intensive. If I know this true story of the XWF has never really been told, but it will be. You'll know everything that happened in the XWF, at least from when I got there till it closed. And Yeah, and there's, like I said, there's formats and business plans and all kinds of cool stuff that nobody's ever seen before. I don't even know how I ended up with the business plan, quite frankly, but I did. Um, and so yeah, so that and then obviously TNA and my a little bit about running a company, a successful company, and we'll get into being Rowdy Piper's tour manager in 1992 for 45 days, crisscrossing the country on Billy Ray Cyrus's tour bus, and uh, so and all the way up to Impact and my run there during COVID through the end of last year.
That would be fantastic. I can't wait for that. I know I am a member of the ad free shows community, and there was a show you and John Albert started doing with the XWF, and I just found that so fascinating and just tried to dive down the rabbit hole of trying to find videos or anything I could online. So that's one thing I look forward to with volume 2.
We had a whole series of that, but they never got produced.
Mhm.
It was my understanding they were going to put it, everything's behind a firewall there. They don't really, you got to pay to watch it. It was my understanding they were going to put it behind the $9 paywall, which I think is the lowest one, $9 a month, which is like, now you used to say you could get a pizza, now not so much, but you get a hamburger and fries. And but they ended up putting it behind like a $35 paywall or a $39 paywall, and then they said, well, nobody watched it, so we're not going to produce any more episodes. And I'm like, well, yeah, because you put it behind a really expensive paywall. And people are careful with their money, and there's a lot of money things to buy in this business. Go to wrestling shows, get memorabilia, go to autograph signings, all kinds of different stuff, and indie shows. And you know there's only a certain level people are going to pay to hear about a lost promotion. But I'm hoping, and this is news I have not told anybody yet, but I'm hoping, and I'm pretty sure that we're going to have the rest of those episodes produced and offered as a bundle with the second book.
Oh, wow. That'd be awesome.
Because we did finish doing them, they just never got post-produced. So.
Yeah. Well, there's some good breaking news for everybody here to look out for Volume 2 and get some fantastic insight on those shows. Because, like I said, the episodes I believe they released one. I know they released one, maybe a second one but the episodes there were really interesting. And like I said, helped me dive down the XWF rabbit hole to try to find videos and as much content as I could on it. So
and there's not a lot out there, and there's
no,
not really a lot of people talking. Jimmy Hart doesn't really do interviews. Not because he's not a great guy, because he is, just because Jimmy just doesn't want to he doesn't want to have to pick a side. He wants to be Switzerland. So if he goes on an interview and they say, who is your favorite tag team to manage? Well, he doesn't want to piss off the Hart Foundation, but he doesn't want to piss off the Nasty Boys or and all these other teams. So he'd rather he doesn't really delve into anything deep. Usually he's there just to promote whatever's coming to the city, there, whether it's an appearance or a show or WrestleMania stuff with WWE. So, but and then Knobs, but Knobs is a very smart businessman, believe it or not. I know people probably hear that and they laugh. He certainly has his moments where he's not. Not that he's not smart. He's just not a businessman. He's back to being a nasty boy. But he could be a smart businessman. But I don't think that. I don't know. I don't know why that he never told the story. So and other than that, I was pretty much as deep in as anybody else. And I kept a lot of the stuff. I was the last employee. Even Here's another breaking news story. Even Brian Knobs doesn't know this. They secretly kept me on salary off. They paid me off the books for about 6 to 8 months to kind of put everything. That's probably how I got the business plan to be there to I didn't go to an office. I worked from home before working from home was cool. But just to help end everything and make sure that everything, all the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted. So more breaking news.
Yeah, no, absolutely, fantastic. Like I said, I love the insight on this stuff. I mean, getting that backstage knowledge, the inside scoop on stuff. I mean, that's what a lot of us are looking for and a lot of stuff. So thank you for sharing that information. Makes me look more forward to Volume 2 when it comes up here. So
coming out in October, I think. That's when we advertised it. So I guess I better get back to work.
So another thing with the Volume 1 here, covering WCW, a lot of people always kind of say they have a moment of, here's where it looks like WCW started their downward trend, their downward turn. Everybody kind of always picks a moment that they look at and say that was kind of it. As someone who was there from the start of Nitro to the day the doors closed, do you have a moment where you look at and go, I think that might have been it. That might have been when we started the turn down.
Yeah, nothing personal, but definitely Vince Russo. I'm sturgently feel. I don't even know sturgently is a word, but I'll use it. Feel that Vince Russo was not a good wrestling writer. Some people liked it. God bless him. You know, it wasn't for me. Let's put that. Not that he wasn't a good wrestling writer. He wasn't a writer who produced content that I enjoyed. I thought it was a fun house. It turned into a fun house of goofy shit, and I just never liked his style. And you know, to me, that's, you know, now Vince will go on his podcast and he'll say all these, and again, it's nothing personal. I wish Vince the best. It's not like Cornette where I want to piss on his grave when he does. You know, if I saw him tomorrow, I'd give him a handshake and a hug. It's nothing personal. I just didn't like his style. And you know, you don't have to like everything that's on in professional wrestling. You know, Brett Lauderdale, who I consider a friend and a super smart businessman who runs Game Changer Wrestling, but once you get a light bulb out and start hitting people over the head with it, you've lost me. On Sting's last match with the glass, you've lost me. Doesn't mean that other people don't like it. Doesn't mean that it's bad. Just it's not something I'm into, so I don't watch it. But I had to watch what Russo was writing because I was there. It was my job. I didn't have the choice to turn the channel. So, you know, and I'm not blaming Vince for the company going out of business. That company was going out of business once Turner lost power, as Guy's Nitro book, you know, went into great detail. You know, once Turner lost power, even if that was making $100 million a year and had the #1 rated cable television show, they were going to dump it. They were embarrassed to have it on their networks. And the only reason it stayed was because Turner had the power. And when he lost it, we were done. So we didn't know that. I didn't know that at the time. I'm sure there were some top people in the company that knew that at the time, but I didn't know that. And I'm glad I didn't know that because it would have driven me nuts. So, you know, I found out on a Saturday that the company was sold. Sunday, we had to travel for the last Nitro. And then Monday, we did the last Nitro. So it's like it happened so quick. I didn't, you know, get to like feel sorry for myself or anything.
I know when they announced the sale, it all just seemed really fast and really sudden. So I mean, I'm sure there wasn't a lot of time for reaction from you guys or even kind of, you know, comprehending it there to start with.
Oh, and they did that on purpose because if they would have given Eric or somebody else who might have been interested at time to get a TV deal with another company, they'd have been stuck with it at least for another year or so while due diligence was going on, you know, so they sold it to Vince for, you know, $3.5 million or something ridiculous like that. And I remember when Hulk found out how much they Vince paid, he'd like, hell, I'd have paid more than that. It's valuable, you know, all that tape is going to be valuable, and as we, you know, go in this new realm of technology. And you know, so yeah, so you know, they wanted to get rid of it. They didn't want anybody to have an excuse to you know, shop it out around or anything else. They gave it away and dumped it, and that was on purpose.
Oh no, absolutely. They were just looking to get out of it as fast as possible there,
yeah,
with the folks at Turner. So absolutely. So one of the big things in wrestling is always the stories of ribs and stories of always trying to, you know, get everybody to kind of have a good laugh. When you're out there, I know it's kind of more of that professional feel. You want to try to, you know, put on that, you know, stern face, you know, do your job. But I have to ask, is there any time when you've been out there, either ringside, in the ring, where somebody's come in the ring and their goal has just been to try to make you laugh or try to get you to break either while announcing or just kind of in the ring, just kind of standing?
Oh, sure. I mean, they used to do that to themselves. If you ever watch a Rick Rude match versus Sting when they were feuding, the Dangerous Alliance, Sting would do all these different variations on you know, he'd like dropping Rick on his crotch, even like, you know, picking him up and you know, him facing Sting, and then, you know, or, you know, they do like you know, different moves. There was a whole series of spots that they had, and Rude would do this stuff where he would like act like he, you know, was shriveling up and walking around, and you could see Sting in the tape. He would cover his mouth. He'd like cover his entire mouth with his top of his mouth with his hand, so people didn't see him laughing. So yeah, I mean, yeah, back then there was no internet, there was no cell phones, so yeah, that's what we did to pass the time away.
Absolutely.
I mean,
I would say,
even that deal with Jey Uso and the Bloodline that went viral,
yeah.
that when he was laughing, you know, I'm sure that I'm sure that there was a lot of ribbon afterwards about that, about you know how he couldn't get it under control.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and I say, yeah, back then those moments could go a little easier, especially house shows as well, where there's a lot more of that laid back feeling where you can kind of cut loose and do a few more things to kind of not only entertain the crowd, but entertain yourselves out there.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, yeah, it happened all the time. The referees would try to rib the wrestlers tried to rib the referees, everybody's tried to rib me. They try to rib the manager if there was a manager out there. I mean, it was just trying to entertain yourself, but it was always done professionally, so that it didn't like look anything out of the ordinary. It was just an inside joke or something that you knew that you know. You might cut an in-ring promo at a house show and tell a story, about something that happened the other night, at a bar after the match, but like change the story so that the guy in the ring knows you're talking about him, but the crowd doesn't know you're talking about him. If that makes any sense. So yeah, it was just just tried to pass the time away by entertaining ourselves.
Yeah. Something else that I, think about with WCW was always the Disney tapings. They would tape several shows, tons of shows just at the Disney lot there. When you're doing those shows at Disney, do you ever get the free time to just roam the park or just go explore Disney, or are you just always just doing the tapings and just kind of do your job and go home at that point?
Disney, I don't recall. I mean, no, we really, they picked us up in the morning in buses and they took us there. And I think our first taping was 11:30. And then, we'd get like a 45-minute break and then we'd do, 4 a day. And then we'd go on I think if you wanted to stay, they probably would have given you a pass. But most people wanted to get back. We all stayed at the same hotel or residence inn. Uh, and, uh, it was a big after party, all the production, and it was really fun. It really became a family production. The wrestlers were always, the talent was always a family, traveling together, but now production was getting involved, and the carpentry people and the lighting people, and everybody really got to know each other. Everybody sitting around the pool drinking. I had a guy who did a crane camera who became a great friend of mine, who used to play guitar and sing. He was really really good. He still is. And it was everybody wanted to get back and just kind of hang. So uh you know I think like if somebody had a young kid and they wanted to stay, I'm sure they would have been able to stay. um but uh but it just wasn't the type of thing that anybody really wanted to do for the most part.
Well, I guess on that note, I'll follow up the same kind of question, but with Impact, they would tape at Universal Studios. There's stories of when Mick Foley came in, sometimes he would be lost because he would just go wander into Universal Studios, ride some roller coasters during tapings or in between tapings. Was it kind of the same thing with that with Impact, or were guys just constantly trying to wander over there and have a good time while still being at the tapings?
No, it was a little freer of a situation. After all this time, because WCW moved from Disney to Universal at the end, and then TNA and Universal. Everybody got to know everybody. The people in the back that work for Universal. You got to know the wrestlers and vice versa, and they'd go out and have drinks afterwards at the ale house or whatever. And uh, so it was a little bit more free. If you wanted to go out and ride a ride or something like that, you could. I remember several times that I brought my family there and got them in for free during the day, and then they came to the matches at night because my kids were younger, and so they enjoyed that. That was a little bit more freer. I think Disney was a little bit more strict, just because Disney being Disney, it's always it's always very very strict. Even people I know that work there now, you know there's so many rules for them. So I think that's probably why in Disney, I don't 100% remember, but thinking about it, more therapy, probably probably was why it was like, and we were new, that nobody ever done wrestling in the theme park before. So it was almost like, given, everybody knew, hey, don't push the limits here. This is Disney World. We don't want to get uninvited, you know?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I would say I could keep asking you questions here all night. I'm thoroughly enjoying getting the chance to talk to you. But I'll let you get going out here. I believe we can follow you on Twitter or X, whatever people want to call it now, at David Penzer. But you want to tell us
Here's
again
the,
where
yeah,
we
but
can?
and I'd love for people to follow me, but here's the problem I have with X.
Yeah,
So it's not Twitter anymore.
yeah,
You could I could sort of understand that. I could get that. I could buy into it, except for when you put out an X, it's still called a tweet. And
yeah.
when you repost an X, it's still called a retweet. So you can never get away from Twitter if what you're doing is tweeting. So that's the problem I have with that. But yeah, I'm on it, and we don't talk politics and messy stuff. We just talk about wrestling, a little music. I'm a big music fan, and every once in a while I'll tell a silly story that just came to my mind, and so yeah, it's fun. It's a fun little ride.
And then again, we can get the books on Amazon or Guy Evans' book, right?
Yeah, Amazon. If you just want the book, it's the same price for the book on davidpenzerbook.com. If you just want a copy of the book, you go to Amazon. If you want to check out what the bundles are, you go to davidpenzerbook.com, and like I said, they've been very popular, much more popular than I would have thought. Although in hindsight, probably not. But me, I'm always I'm always the one thinking the worst. See, I still have no self-confidence. But no, I do, but I'm just been really surprised with how popular those have been. So yeah, I'd love for people to read the book, leave a review on Amazon, let me know what you think on Twitter, and I appreciate your time. I don't know if you still want to talk about hobbies or not.
I mean, if you got some hobbies, I'd love to hear about them. I mean, what else,
I'm a
what are some outside of this wrestling bubble here?
big fantasy football geek, obsessed with it for the last 20 years. Um, uh, Big Rays fan. Well, that's been challenging this year, but they seem to be getting a little better. Uh, Political junkie, I always was. I used to read the newspaper when I was 10 years old, every day, and listen to the 6 o'clock news in South Florida. Um, and live music. I love live music. People spend, when people make money and they put aside for a rainy day for something special, some people, want to go to WrestleMania. Some people want to, buy a car. Some people, want to take a trip to France. Not that I wouldn't want to do all those things, and I have done most of them. But my thing is live music. Especially classic rock and '90s country. Big fan. So that's my pretty much that's all that interests me is fantasy football during the season, Rays during the season, uh, politics, which is kind of hard these days, but I'm sticking with it, and live music.
On that live music question, I got to follow up on that. What is the best show you've seen live? If you can, if you can't narrow down one, maybe name a couple. But what are some of the best shows you've gone to live?
The best band or the best shows?
We'll go band and show.
I think one like in second place would be probably I'm a big REO Speedwagon fan. Um, I'd say my favorite concert of all time was probably Boston. As far as shows, um, I was at the thing called the Jamaica World Music Festival. They only did it one year. You could Google it. They had like the Grateful Dead there. Jimmy Buffett played. The concert started like at 8 o'clock at night and like lasted throughout till sunrise. So like the Grateful Dead's playing like as the sun is rising, and there was just a lot of great acts there and from different kinds of music. So that was, and I was still a teenager. My dad took me, bless his soul, and I'd say there was a concert in Atlanta. They did one in Atlanta and one in Los Angeles after 9/11. And it was all like everybody in classic rock industry, either their band or their lead singer, put on like an 8-hour show of only greatest hits. I think it was headlined by Skinnerd. As a matter of fact, I know it was. Um, and I mean, it was everybody. It was Styx. It was REO Speedwagon. It was you know, I can't even begin to remember Night Ranger and the lead singer of this band and the lead singer of this band and you know Loverboy, and just bands like that, and each came out and sang like 2 or 3 of their hit songs and then went away, and next band, and it was very emotional too because of what we were paying tribute to. But I would have to say those two are probably the ones that stick out. But I have a ton of favorite bands, and if they play classic rock, pretty much I've seen them. I saw what's called now Camping World Stadium. I was a teenager again, and I saw the Rolling Stones on the Start Me Up tour in that stadium, and the opening act was a young unknown band called Van Halen.
That would be that would be a heck of a show to go see, especially with
Yeah.
that as an opener. Oh wow.
Yeah, so they had like their first single that they were touring on, and I think it was "Dance the Night Away." But anyway, so yeah, I've been blessed, man. I've been blessed in life. I've been blessed in the wrestling thing. I've gotten to get to know guys in Skinner. Ricky Medlock and Johnny Van Zant are friends. Uh, uh, so that's really cool. So yeah, just I've gotten to know some cool people and gotten to see a lot of cool things, and uh, I'm a very lucky guy.
And then I got to follow up on the fantasy football. Are you more of the I'm going to be in like several different leagues? Or are you just focusing on one league? Like what is your style when it comes to fantasy football?
No, I'm commissioner in 2, and then I usually try to pick up a third one. 3 is about the most for me because I'm so obsessed with it. Like, I like take notes and write up strategy sheets, and like everybody and their brother have like rankings. So I'll like have a whole page of where every player that I have is ranked. And I'd read all the stardom situms every week, and for 18 weeks, 19 weeks, however long it is, I'm obsessed. Uh, I don't even really think about it when the season's over. But when it's going on, that's all I think about. Obviously I have to go out and do my job, and live my life. But for the most part, that's what I'm totally focused on. I watch every game if I could. Red Zone for sure, which drives my wife nuts. And every Thursday game, every Monday game, Sunday night game. Yeah, it's you know when I get into something, I sort of really get into something. I don't like there's not very many things that's like, I like doing this, but every once in a while. When I take an interest in something, I'm pretty obsessed with it.
No, I can understand that. I do fantasy football. I've had to limit myself, kind of like you. I used to try to do at least 4 or 5 leagues, and then I just realized that that's too overwhelming to try to keep up on. But knowing this, I'll have to bring on my fantasy football questions to you to start getting
Yeah,
my.
one year we did a TNA versus Experts League, or Impact versus Expert League, and like David Carr, Derek Carr's brother, who was a quarterback, was one of the experts. Adam Rank, who's become a friend of mine. I don't know if you know of Adam. He does one of the hosts of NFL Fantasy Live on the NFL Network. Real funny guy, huge wrestling fan. And I think we had there was a wide receiver from the Green Bay Packers back in the days with Brent. What's his name? Brett. Help me out, man. The quarterback before Aaron Rodgers.
Brett Favre.
Brett Favre. Sorry, I should have known that. This is
Okay.
what happens when you get old. You can remember every word to the song American Pie, but you can't think of Brett frickin' Favre. I'm just warning you. I'm giving you a heads up. It's very frustrating. But
Well, he's been in the league for a long time now. I mean, he's been gone. I mean, once you're out of the league a couple of years, nobody remembers who you are.
oh, James Jones was the guy's name, and he actually won it. He won the whole thing. I did horrible. Man, they Eric Young was on did it. Tommy Dreamer did it on Impact side. I like, usually I'm the king of the drafts, the fantasy drafts. They went so freaking quick. I gave up. It's at one point I was just guessing, really. I mean, because they do so many drafts for so long in so many different leagues. They're just like, I was totally out of my league. Uh, Tommy Dreamer used to have his own league. He didn't do it last year. His mom had passed away, and stuff like that. But I'm hoping he does it again this year, because that's always fun. There's a lot of wrestlers on there. So yeah, I can do 3 or 4, but any more than that, then you got to start rooting against yourself.
Right.
So it's like, I got this guy on this team, and then I'm playing against this guy on this other league, and then you got to hope that he scores enough points for you to win your game, but not enough points for you to win the game in the other league, and it starts getting difficult and complicated, and that's not what I'm into it for. I'm into it for the enjoyment, and even though I make myself miserable if I lose. This is the first year in one of my leagues in 17 years that I didn't make the playoffs.
Oh wow. That's a heck of a run right there, going that long for the playoffs.
And we extended it from 4 teams to 6 teams make the playoffs, and I still didn't win. I had every injured running back and wide receiver in the history of and of course my starting quarterback at the beginning of the year was Aaron Rodgers, who lasted about a minute and a half. So yeah, I was constantly, stretching it's a 12-team league. I don't mean to get on a fantasy football tangent, but yeah, just nothing was going right. I was making trades that ended up blowing up just so I could field the team one week. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then, so I'd trade for a backup if the guy was injured for a week, but then when the guy came back, I'd be screwed because I'd have to play his backup. It was one of those years where nothing went right. But yeah, I have a pretty good, up until this year, there had never been a year for 17 years that I didn't at least break even making my money back.
That's a good run there, especially on those money leagues where you're just trying to, like you said, just try to break even. That's kind of what I go for as well. I just want to break even, get my money back, and I'll be happy with everything.
Yeah, this is the first year. It was a very disappointing season, but there's always next year. So yeah, getting ready for training camp and had the draft, and so let's see what we're working with. I don't really follow it a lot now, but as training camp breaks and the preseason games start, I'll start to pay attention to it.
Do you follow a particular team in the NFL, or are you just kind of just watching for the?
Well, I live in Tampa Bay, so I'm if all things being equal, it was fun to see the Bucks win the Super Bowl with Tom Brady. But and I tell my wife this, and it drives her nuts. If the Bucks are playing the Titans, although he's not on the Titans anymore, and I got Derrick Henry, I want Derrick Henry to score 10 touchdowns against the Bucks. And if the Bucks could somehow win and my guy scores 10 touchdowns, then that's nice. That's okay. But if they lose and he scores 10 touchdowns, well, you know what? Sorry. So I'm always rooting for people that are playing against the Bucks, and it drives my wife nuts.
Well, sometimes that's just as much fun as, got to egg that on.
Yeah, it was very interesting season when Brady was here because they were really doing good and they ended up winning the Super Bowl, which is exciting to be a fan. But then also I had to temper my expectations with Bucks players, and if I'm playing Tom Brady, I don't know, I'd kind of want you to have a bad game. Mm-hmm. So that when the Bucks aren't that good, it's not that hard to not care. But when they had that season, it was kind of hard. But anyway, I'm just going off on tangents, so I appreciate your time, though.
Yeah, not a problem. Like I said, I didn't want to hold you up tonight. I look forward to, like I said, I'm reading Volume 1 right now. It's been fantastic what I've been reading so far, and like I said, I look forward to Volume 2, and much success to you, and again, thank you for your time tonight.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. When you're done reading it, please leave a review on Amazon.com, and yeah, maybe we could do this again sometime, but when Volume 2 comes out.
I would absolutely love it, because trust me, half of my questions were going to be about XWF, and I was trying to hold myself back on that now, knowing Volume 2 was coming. So yeah, I'll have you back for that and talk to you about all my questions about that.
All right, I look forward to it. Have a good night, man. Thank you.
You too. Thank you for the time. Appreciate it.